At a local talent show, a frail, quiet old woman walks on stage, and people in the crowd snicker, thinking it's a prank. A few even laugh out loud. The judges roll their eyes. But when she starts singing, everything changes. Her voice? Heavenly. Bone-chilling. Powerful. The entire hall freezes. People start tearing up. By the end of her performance, the entire crowd rises to their feet in stunned silence, then bursts into thunderous applause. But what nobody knows is the real reason why she chose this one song. It's not just a song, it's a goodbye. Before starting the story, make sure to subscribe the channel so that you don't miss any update in future. The lights dimmed. The host called out the next act with a half-hidden smirk. Up next, we have Margaret, 81 years young. A few people in the audience chuckled. Someone from the back whispered, "Oh God, is this a comedy act?" The curtain pulled back, and there she stood. Fragile, thin as a shadow, a wobbly cane in one hand and trembling fingers clutching the mic with the other. She wore a faded floral dress and shoes that had seen too many winters. Her white hair was tied in a loose bun, and her eyes looked like they'd seen lifetimes. Whispers grew louder. A few teenagers giggled. One of the judges leaned over and muttered, "Is this for real?" Margaret didn't flinch. She didn't smile. She didn't even look at the crowd. She simply stood there, silent. For a full 5 seconds, nothing happened. Not a sound. Just her, standing. The tension turned into awkwardness. People exchanged glances. Someone even fake coughed to break the silence. Then she raised her head slowly and whispered into the mic. "I'd like to sing a song that means a lot to me." Still no reaction. People were waiting for a joke, a punchline, anything to justify why this woman was even on the stage. But then, the music began. A soft piano note, slow, haunting, echoing through the silent hall. And just like that, everything started to change. The first note that left her lips wasn't just music. It was a memory. It was grief wrapped in melody. It was raw pain smuggled into a lullaby. The crowd, mid-chuckle, froze. One of the judges straightened in their seat. Another slowly lowered the pen they'd been spinning in boredom. Phones that were being used to record for comedy content started focusing in, hands shaking ever so slightly. Her voice wasn't perfect. It cracked. It trembled. But it pierced. It wasn't the kind of voice that won reality shows. It was the kind that stayed with you. Like the sound of a mother singing to her child one last time. Like goodbye. Every word she sang felt lived. Not rehearsed. Not performed, but bled. You could see it now. Her eyes weren't just old. They were full. Full of stories. Full of storms she had survived. And the way her hands clutched the microphone. Not like she was holding on to perform. Like she was holding on to something. Someone. The camera zoomed in on a single tear slipping down her cheek as she hit a soft, trembling high note. Not a single person in that hall was laughing anymore. Even the host backstage, the one who announced her as a joke, had his hand over his mouth. Because they were all realizing the same thing. This wasn't a performance. This was a memory being exhaled before it disappeared forever. 3 rows from the front, one of the younger judges, a pop star with millions of followers and a face known for smirking, suddenly looked uncomfortable. Not because of the pitch, not because of the performance, but because something in her voice hit him like a freight train. She sang of loss, of waiting by windows that never opened again, of birthdays forgotten, of war, of love that left and never came back. And in that moment, that arrogant, glitter-covered judge suddenly saw his mother, saw her alone in that tiny apartment, saw the way he missed her call last week, saw how he never replied to that "I'm proud of you" text. The camera caught it, a flicker in his expression, a twitch in the lip, a crack in the posture. Meanwhile, Margaret kept singing, eyes closed, hands trembling, but not a single word missed. Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't soar. It sank deep into chests, into rib cages, into places people forgot they had. And then it happened. Right in the middle of her second verse, she looked up. Not at the judges, not at the crowd, but at one empty seat in the front row. Everyone noticed. Why was she staring at that? That vacant seat, with a single red rose placed on it. Nobody had noticed it before. Nobody had asked. But now the entire room wanted to know. Who was that seat for? And why did her eyes fill with tears every time she looked at it? The camera zoomed in slowly on that empty chair. Velvet seat. Single spotlight kissing the armrest. And there it was, the red rose. Fresh. Like it had just been placed minutes ago. Carefully. Deliberately. Lovingly. The audience was silent, but you could feel the weight in the room shifting. No one laughed anymore. No one whispered. Even the AC vent's hum felt louder in the silence. And Margaret. Her eyes wouldn't leave that seat. Even as she sang, her gaze remained locked there. Unshaken. Haunted. One of the older staff members backstage whispered to the host. Did anyone come with her? The host shook his head. She checked in alone. No family. No friends. Said she didn't need anyone. But that rose said otherwise. That rose meant something. It wasn't just a flower. It was a promise. An unspoken tribute. And the more she sang, the more the crowd realized. This wasn't just a performance. This was goodbye. Her voice quivered on a line, if you're out there. I'm still singing to you. A woman in the audience gasped. A man in the second row wiped his eyes and didn't care who saw, because this wasn't about fame. It wasn't about winning. It wasn't even about the song anymore. It was about the rose, the seat, and the ghost sitting in it. As her voice floated through the auditorium, the lyrics began to shift. It wasn't just pain now. It was memory. Margaret sang of letters never delivered, of names whispered in bunkers, of hands held under rubble, and of a voice one she hadn't heard in 60 years that promised, if you sing, I'll find you. People sat up. Wait, what? This wasn't poetry. This was personal. This was a real vow made in the most unreal of places, a war zone. Decades ago, she had fallen in love with a man while sirens screamed above them. A soldier. Kind. Soft-spoken. The kind who folded notes instead of texting, who memorized verses instead of scrolling timelines. They only had 3 weeks together. 3 stolen weeks. But they made a promise. If the world tore them apart, if chaos won, then she would sing. And he would come find her. The rose. The empty seat. The gaze she couldn't break. Was she still waiting for him? Or had he already come and left one final message? A quiet stir spread across the crowd. Goosebumps. Tears. And one simple question rising in every mind. Is this song for a ghost? Her song reached its softest note yet, a whisper barely audible. But in that moment, the silence that followed, it roared louder than thunder. The entire hall, frozen. No coughs. No shuffles. No camera clicks. Just stillness. As if everyone had forgotten to breathe. A little girl in the third row clutched her mom's hand tighter. An old man removed his glasses and wiped them, not because they were dirty, but because his eyes wouldn't stop misting. Margaret stood in the spotlight like a memory come alive. Not trying to impress. Not chasing applause. Just fulfilling a promise. And then, she paused. Not because she forgot the words. Not because she needed a break. But because the next line was the one she'd been carrying in her chest for 60 years. Her lips trembled. Her eyes looked again at the empty chair. She exhaled, and with every ounce of soul left in her lungs, she sang it. I kept singing. Why didn't you come back? A collective gasp echoed across the room. One of the judges stood up without even realizing it. People weren't just watching a performance anymore. They were living a chapter of her life. They were inside it, and they didn't want to leave. Backstage, the host stared at the screen, whispered, "What is happening right now?" No one answered, because in that second, everyone was him. Everyone was her. Everyone was waiting for someone who never came back. She held that final note longer than her years should have allowed. It wasn't just control, it was conviction. Like she wasn't singing to a crowd. She was singing to one man. And then movement. A shadow. Back of the auditorium. Near the exit sign, just beside the pillar. An old man stood up slowly. Military posture, but weathered. Cane in hand. Hat in the other. Eyes locked on her. No one else noticed at first. But Margaret did. Her lips parted. Her knees buckled slightly, like her soul had recognized something her brain hadn't caught up to yet. The music stopped. But no one clapped. She whispered, barely audible into the mic. James. The man didn't move, didn't blink. But something glistened down his cheek, a tear that had been waiting decades to fall. A tremble in his lip, not from age, but from remorse. The room held its breath. No one dared break the magic. Even time seemed to pause at the edges of that stage. And for a split second, everything made sense. The rose, the promise, the performance. It wasn't an audition. It was a reunion. He didn't speak. She didn't move. For a moment, the stage wasn't a stage, it was a time machine. Two souls, ripped apart by war and years, now stood in the same room, but separated by 6 decades of silence. Margaret's hands shook. Her mic lowered. Her eyes, full of disbelief, rage, relief, all crashing together. And finally, with a voice that cracked like dry leaves, she asked, "Why didn't you write?" The man took a shaky breath. Not the kind you take before speaking. The kind you take before confessing. "I did." His voice echoed like thunder in a still valley. He pointed to his chest pocket, pulled out a faded envelope. Dozens of them. Yellowed. Torn. Never delivered. "I sent letters every month. But your town was bombed. I thought you were gone." The entire room turned into a vacuum, not a sound, not a blink. "And you?" he asked softly. "Why did you stop singing?" Her chin quivered. "I didn't. Not until they told me you died in battle." A pause. 2 broken people, each thinking the other was lost. Each carrying half a love story. She stepped forward. He didn't flinch. She touched the rose on the chair. "You still remembered." He nodded. "I never forgot." And just like that, 1,000 hearts shattered and healed at once. Margaret's voice, once trembling, now found a new strength. She took a deep breath and began to sing not just for the crowd, but for him. For James. For the love that survived bombed letters and lost years. Her song was no longer about waiting. It was about forgiving. About finding peace in the silence. Every note carried a story. Of pain, yes, but also of hope. Of a love that refused to die, even when the world tried to bury it. The audience? They weren't just listeners anymore. They were witnesses to a miracle. As Margaret sang, tears streamed freely from her, from James, and from everyone watching. No one wiped them away. Because sometimes, tears are the loudest applause. When the last note faded, the auditorium erupted. Standing ovation. Cheers. Whispers of "that was unbelievable." James stood up. He took Margaret's hand. And for the first time in 60 years, their eyes met with a silent promise. This was not the end. The applause slowly faded, but the magic in the air didn't. Margaret and James stood hand in hand, not as strangers reunited, but as 2 hearts finally beating together again. The host came forward, his eyes glistening. "Ladies and gentlemen, what you witnessed today was more than a performance. It was a testament to love, hope, and second chances." Margaret smiled, her voice steady now. This stage was never about fame or recognition. It was about healing wounds that life left behind. James nodded, his gaze soft but full of resolve. "We lost years, yes. But we found today. And that's worth everything." The crowd erupted once more, this time with joy, not just for the story, but for the promise that life, no matter how broken, could still be beautiful. Backstage, whispers started spreading. Did you see her? That voice, that soul. An inspiration for all of us. And somewhere in that hum of admiration, a spark was born. Because sometimes, the most unexpected moments become the brightest beginnings. As the crowd slowly dispersed, Margaret and James stayed behind, batting away the weight of 60 years with a smile and a quiet strength. She looked at him, eyes shimmering with unshed tears. We wasted so much time. But maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late after all. James squeezed her hand gently. Time is a tricky thing. It can break us or heal us. And today, it chose to heal. Their story wasn't just about missed chances. It was about the power of resilience. About never giving up even when the world seemed to have forgotten you. Margaret's voice softened. I hope someone out there, watching this, knows it's never too late to sing their own song. James nodded. Because every moment still holds the chance to rewrite the story. And with that, they turned toward the exit, leaving behind a room full of hearts forever changed. The lights dimmed, but the energy in the room was electric. Margaret stepped forward one last time, her eyes scanning the sea of faces. Knowing this moment was bigger than any stage or spotlight, she took a breath. And with a voice steady yet filled with raw emotion, she spoke to the crowd, not just as a performer, but as a storyteller of life. Thank you for listening to a story that could have been lost. A story of love, loss, and the power to rise again. We all have songs inside us, waiting to be heard. James stood beside her, smiling gently, his hand still firmly holding hers, a symbol of hope rekindled. The crowd rose as one, a standing ovation that shook the very walls. Tears flowed freely, applause thundered, and hearts connected across time and space. This was more than a talent show. It was a reminder. No matter how dark the past, how long the silence, there's always a chance to sing again. As the curtain fell, the story didn't end. It lived on. In every soul touched that day, in every whisper of courage, in every heartbeat ready to begin anew. No matter how tough life gets, never silence your voice. Every heart holds a story waiting to be heard. All it takes is the courage to sing it out loud. Don't be afraid to shine, because true strength lies in turning your pain into love.